A Dakini is considered to be a goddess of knowledge. That means these are entities that exist in an astral realm and are very much known in the Tibetan tradition. Tibetan yogis, Tibetan practitioners, Buddhists or otherwise, sometimes, I don't think all of them, but some of them have practices where they actually try and aim to connect with Dakinis. And connecting with Dakinis means that they do certain meditation practices, visualization practices, using certain mandalas by which they try to kind of go in an astral experience to interact with Dakinis. You can even do it while you sleep in a dream, like in a conscious dream, not a regular dream, but when you do it consciously, you can interact with Dakinis. And the Dakinis, if they agree to interact with the person, Dakinis are not exactly sitting there and let's say somehow you meet them in the astral and they say, sure, I'm going to help you. What do you need? This is not like that. It works very differently. Dakinis are considered to be wild and sometimes scary and intense entities. They are not necessarily negative, but you need to be what in yoga and tantra we would call a vira. Both a man or a woman can be a vira. This is the kind of heroic spiritual attitude to interact with the Dakini. And by doing that, the practice you have to be very yang in your energy, very strong in your control of the energy, and then interact with the Dakini. Actually, some say by dominating the Dakini. She needs to submit to you. If you're a woman, it would be Dakshas, not Dakinis. That's the male equivalent. The Dakinis, once the connection is established, they can be very powerful. They can share knowledge, they can give initiations, they can do all kinds of support for the yogi on the path. But the yogi has to be very strong. For example, in the case of, I believe his name was Tilopa, who was one of the original gurus in the lineage that led to Marpa and Milarepa, the greatest yogis of Tibet. Tilopa was a Brahmin in India before he went to Tibet and started the path that is there now. And Tilopa was sitting one day, it's very common in India, you can see sometimes people who are pandits and scholars, they sit even next to the street on a certain days or something, and they read from spiritual books in Sanskrit, and they're kind of scholars. So one time he was sitting there and doing his reading on spiritual texts, and suddenly an old woman passed by, and she made fun of him, and she said, "Can you even understand what you read?" And then she spit on his text and went away. He was shocked, because this is unheard of, that some old woman would come and treat a Brahmin, which is a priest basically, with such disrespect. But he understood immediately that it must have been a Dakini in disguise, trying to show him that he needs to do something in that respect. He has something to learn here. So he went into a meditative state and he tried to find this Dakini. And apparently there's a lot that has been going on. He had a whole astral travel going on in his meditation and went through all kinds of long distance and challenges and so on. And eventually the story goes, I don't remember the details right now, the story goes that he reached the land of the Dakinis in the astral. It's not a physical thing, in the astral, in his meditation. And when he reached there, many Dakinis were standing there like in a big castle or something, welcoming him and tempting him. He ignored them. He was using a mantra. He ignored them and continued through all that and went all the way to the main hall where the queen of the Dakinis was sitting on the chair there, and she welcomed him. And only then she submitted to him, and then he had some kind of a relationship with the Dakini. But actually, when you look at the history of Tibet, for example, before the Chinese came and so on, they were not very soft, compassion all the time type of thing that we think today. Actually, they had very tough things going on there in the Tibetan environment. They even had, many people don't know, in the palace, I think it is in, I forgot the name there, in Tibet, in the capital, they even have jailhouses there, and people were put in jail, and you would ask, where's all the compassion and so on? Actually, it was a tough environment. And in spirituality, generally, it's not always just roses, like in the hippie environment of today, that if you're spiritual, you're just supposed to hug people all the time and smell flowers, and that's spirituality, very sweet and lovely. Actually, spirituality can be very, very tough. In some environments, it's been very tough. In the Christian environment, some Christian monks and Christian saints were living in such tough environments, and they were very tough with people heartful and yet very tough with people. They were not always just, hugging and welcome, let's smoke a pipe together or something. It was very different, and so in Tibet and so in others. So yes, sometimes in spirituality, there is a need to be very tough in the attitude. It doesn't make sense for modern people, but in the old days, it was known that in spirituality, you have to have a certain tough, strong attitude. That's how you conquer spirituality and become successful. The whole body orgasm does not depend exclusively on the structure of the genitals or what's going on there. So that means that a person can still have a whole body orgasm if they develop enough sensitivity, they remove blockages, the drill, everything we discuss here. And then the whole body orgasm will be for the whole body. Even if a person is missing some parts or had surgery or something, it might be creating a blockage. That's true because something was cut, but can be overcome energetically. And then it is still possible. If you would ask me, can she have what we call the cervical uterine orgasm in the tantric sexuality in making love? No, because for that you need to have a cervix. But other than that, the energy generally is not a problem. So I said that Kashmiri Shaivism is one of the highest or the highest form of Tantra. And what does it mean? It means that Kashmiri Shaivism is a form of tantric teaching that is going to the most spiritual level of the tantric teachings, which means there, by practicing Kashmiri Shaivistic techniques and studying Kashmiri Shaivism and going into the bhakti of Kashmiri Shaivism, the person can go into such metaphysical levels which are practical, not just philosophy. And by doing that, we're talking about reaching, high levels of consciousness is the wrong word here, because many people think that enlightenment is just one thing. Buddha reached enlightenment. It's some form of whatever it is. But actually what you learn in Kashmiri Shaivism, among other things, is that enlightenment is a very broad term. You can get to a higher level of consciousness, like even Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali mentions that there are 6 different levels of samadhi. Samadhi being the last of the 8 levels of Patanjali, but there are 6 types of samadhi. And one is higher than the other, which means you can get more refined and more higher level of consciousness and even more and even more. In Kashmiri Shaivism, they go into much more details than Patanjali. And they describe many more levels that you can reach as higher and higher levels of consciousness. For most people who don't even know what enlightenment is and never experienced it, then for them it's irrelevant. It's a little bit like if I'm standing with you in New York somewhere and there's a very, very tall skyscraper and we look up and I'm telling you, you see, that's the top over there. We can't see much, we just see the top and we call it enlightenment. But if we would go on the elevator all the way up and then you would see what is the top, actually it has many levels in the top. There's a restaurant and then there's another level and then there's antennas on top and then there's another thing and you realize that top, that was just there, the top. Actually the top is many things. And you can study them and go into very, very high levels. That's what Kashmiri Shaivism is all about, the top. It doesn't deal with the lower levels. You don't do massage, you don't learn sexuality, you don't learn kundalini, you don't learn any of these things really. You just go into the top and you start already from enlightenment, higher. So it's a very, very advanced form of spirituality, very metaphysic, very powerful, but it can be a bit too much for a lot of people. But those who are curious to really go into it and see what it is, it has very powerful techniques and methods. And when you practice those things, they can do incredible things. It can really take you to very high levels of consciousness. I personally can tell you that after practicing many years of yoga and tantra, when I was first introduced to Kashmiri Shaivism, that was about 20-something years ago, it was a big revelation. I realized, wow, whatever I thought I knew so far, this is like a whole new level, and it's like that was kindergarten, and now we're going to the real serious thing, and it was very profound. And this was the experience of quite a few people who did the same thing. So that's what I mean by Kashmiri Shaivism being a very advanced form of Tantra. It is the highest form of Tantra. First of all, meditation is part of the yoga system. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali explains the levels of yoga, the 8 levels of yoga. Level number 7, just before the last stage, is called dhyana, which means meditation. So meditation is an essential part, an integral part of the yoga system. When you do any practice, even if you do an asana, if you do it long enough, deep enough, you'll find that you're meditating in the asana. Meditation is integrated into the yoga practice, and it's an essential stage of evolution in the yoga system. So it's not separate. Now, you asked, what happens if I meditate on a chakra or if I do yoga for a chakra? Is there a difference? There is. Meditation works on a deeper level. I'm not going to go into details, but you remember the lecture of the 5 bodies? So meditation will work on a deeper level, while asanas will start from the basic level of the body, physical body, and maybe energy and stuff like that. So it's like a different approach to working on a chakra or any other aspect of the body. So is there any way to prevent falling asleep in meditation? When a person falls asleep a lot in meditation, it shows a few things. Number one, if you remember, we discussed the 3 gunas. This shows more tamas, more tamasic energy in the body. So it would be good to change the energy in the body by correct diet and lifestyle. When your lifestyle and diet changes to be more pure, then the body will tend to be more easily aware and awake during meditation. Another thing that happens in meditation, especially when meditation is done for the higher chakras, as the energy goes to the higher chakras, especially the crown chakra, at that level, the frequency of the energy is very high frequency. So it's imagine a sound that goes and then to a very, very high-pitched sound. When the energy is so high frequency, it activates the crown chakra, but we're not used to this frequency. And then what it causes is that the awareness cannot follow the high frequency, and then we fall asleep. It's a common thing that when people try to meditate on a higher chakra, many people tend to become drowsy. It's not because they're actually tired. It's just that the frequency is so high that it causes them, it's hard to maintain awareness. And this is where practice comes in. When we do more yoga for the crown chakra, when we do headstands, when we do whatever other techniques to slowly get used to having energy there and stay conscious of it, then as you do the meditation for the higher chakras, you will maintain awareness and won't feel sleepy anymore. I can tell you from experience, you can even see it for yourself sometimes. If someone who is good in meditation sits next to one or more people who are beginners and starts meditating strongly on the crown chakra, it's very common that people start falling asleep around you. It's not because I'm making a funny experiment, let's put everyone to sleep or something. It's just that because the energy starts becoming very high, then other people who are not used to it, it feels like, what's going on here? Why am I so tired? And then they start being a bit, drowsy and so on. So that's the reason why. To solve it, you need to do more yoga to open the higher chakras, and then it'll be easier to meditate without losing your consciousness. There are some more rudimentary ways to do that. First of all, the most obvious thing is to meditate standing up. As long as you stand up straight, you can meditate standing up. It's not comfortable, and that's why you won't fall asleep. There are those who try to meditate while standing on their knees. I think it was Saint Seraphim of Serov from Russia was known to meditate a lot on his knees and to pray on his knees, because some of those saints knew that if they don't do it on the knees, they might get drowsy. Their prayer won't be strong enough. This way, it keeps you alert. Oh, it's very uncomfortable, so you don't feel drowsy. I'm not saying cause harm to yourself, but I'm just saying there are examples of trying to kind of find a way out of this drowsiness. Another thing that some yogis do is they try to squeeze some muscles in the perineum, like some of these mudras or some of these bandhas of squeezing in the perineum. It helps not to fall asleep because you can't squeeze these muscles and still be drowsy, so it kind of helps. Another thing is to make yourself more yang energetically by doing a macrobiotic diet or something to bring more yang energy into your system, and that will help to be more vertical and less yin or sleepy. Those are the recommendations I have at this point.